All right, I am calling Monday, June 10th, 2024 to order. And let's do a quick.
Michael Barron, Town Planner. Paul Rasmussen cannot make it, and Mimi Cal can't make it. We don't have a quorum. We need one more person. So if nobody else comes, the task force won't be taking a vote. It's just going to be open discussion until or unless we get one more person here.
And that's fine. Sally Tobias?
Grant.
Okay. All right, so we don't have a quorum, so we can't make any vote. We can't take any votes, but we don't often do that anyways. So it can be informational, and we can talk about next steps, and I think that would be it. So first of all, do we have an approval of the agenda? Does anybody want to approve that? Oh, we can't even do that, can we?
No.
No, we can't even do anything. Oh, good, we don't have to do all this stuff that we have to do. That's great. So we're going to work with the agenda that we have. We can't make any votes. We have nobody present in the public, and we have no one on.
Mike Mulhern is just arriving on Zoom.
Okay,
right.
Mike Mulhern is on Zoom, but he's not in a good discussion. So, Michael, whenever you get ready, you can just pop in.
He's not in yet.
Okay, whenever he's there, he can pop in, and we'll notice he's here. We don't have any minutes, which is good because we can't approve them anyways. But we can't hear anything from anybody in the room that has anything to say as far as from other committees or.
Let's see, we reviewed the proposed zoning from that had come from the planning board. We didn't make it very far because there was a lot of questions, but I think that once we get into the beat with that, it'll be a little bit better.
Is that the definitions?
The definitions only at this point, yeah. So, you know, through the Housing Task Force at one point, we were really, doing a lot of discussion about a couple of them that should be in there, suggested for the planning board to address. And so I think some of that will be interesting to see what happens at the town council level, see if there's any adjustments in that. Student housing, that was one that I had pushed even sort of from this perspective as a way to do the checks and balances of the community fears that we'll end up with too much of students filling the spots that we would like to develop for the missing middle.
Right.
So the other thing that was at the town council was goals for the 1 to 3 year period. So there were, ones that were sort of related to housing are, addressing key infrastructure concerns based on climate change. They have a UNH fellow that's working on some of the data collection that we need to do some comparative analysis on. The one for housing is bulleted in here as well under pursue long-term economic strength and resiliency. And so they have one in here that's thoughtfully develop and adopt in order efforts to create increased availability of full range of housing types. And the goal is April 2025, and we know that certainly
That's
that will be.
absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was just, we know that we're overachieving in that one. We know we'll see something on that from the planning board. Also, we're going to keep the pulse going in terms of understanding the collaboration between UNH and the town for the West End project. So, that's in there for us to review for PUDs for the West Edge. So that's part of that. It'll be interesting to see how that housing component develops in there. And then housing is again addressed in terms of leveraging town committees and subcommittees, also working towards supporting the development of full range housing types. So workforce, seniors, missing middle, enabling large portion of Durham's workforce to live in town is in there also as a bullet. So I thought we would go into the town council actually narrowing our focus and not having so many lines, but there's 7 goals, and then there's sub bullets under each. As it's smaller, it's crazy. So, but it doesn't mean there aren't some good things in there. It's just a matter of how you prioritize that, especially when if they're tied to fiscal challenges that we'll probably face this year when budget time comes. We'll see what really happens, so. But that I thought was, I think that we have one, two, three, dunk, a couple of tweaks and we're done. And then, oops, we had a whole bunch of ideas coming in from, for new ones, and I think there was a bit of a pushback on that and some uncomfortable discussions, but it's okay, it all came out fine.
Everybody gets to say
Everybody
their
gets to say
side.
their side.
Yeah.
Are these annual goals? Or how
They are
often
set for, they're kind of like long-term, but, immediate.
Yeah, it
Like,
can be anywhere-
In this next year, we'd like to look, but this
So you
may
review
take
them every
longer.
year?
Yes,
every year.
yeah, they
Okay.
actually get reviewed on a quarterly basis. I believe it's quarterly.
Yeah, he'll do an update on.
Yeah, on the updates of the different things, and they apply what they've done to apply to where they think it's pocketed within here. So it also gives us strength for certain departments to be able to push back a little on something that somebody may be requesting if it doesn't fit within what we consider the council goals for that year. So that's,
Actually gives us, as the housing, a good, I'll get into that more after. 'cause
yeah, I think
we
it
have
helps,
some-
it definitely helps strengthen more
Right.
detail, I think, than it has in the past in terms of,
Yeah.
a variety of, it's something that's a priority.
I would ask that when you go back to your next council meeting, that you just mention that to put a deadline date to fix something that is monumentally difficult and challenging is absurd. And you can use that word. Sally said it was absurd.
Well, I think what they're hoping is
to
that the
hope-
workforce housing
Amendment.
amendment is published.
Yeah.
And we're assuming we should be able to
That
get
should
that
happen.
done.
But that
That does
fixes
not
it.
solve
And it
problems.
begins there, and it's a tiny piece of the pie.
It is.
But still, to put, I think it's, I've never seen deadlines on anything.
Well, I think that
ever.
before we've had, from the town council, we've had a nod to the fact that, housing is important. But we've never, so if you put something in there that says, we want multiple types of housing, but is that 20 years from now?
You want to prioritize it.
Exactly. So I think that that's really the message there.
Right. And
Whereas
so
before it was a nod that then
They need to
everybody went nudge,
prioritize.
nudge, we don't really want it.
I think
in
there's a
some
great
cases.
deal about amount of education that still needs it.
Yes.
And grasping of information, even on the council, as to the challenges. I think the planning board has made some steps to understanding, but I think there's still a lot of gaps that they don't fully understand as to how this can really work. We'll get into some more of that later.
Yes.
So how's the state doing?
Well, did you introduce Taylor to everybody?
She has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know
For-
everybody here?
When you were in Spain, we
Oh,
was
you were the
Yeah,
last
when
meeting?
you had gone
Okay,
around to
great.
Spain.
Yes. And were you at the planning?
Yes,
board
I was at
meeting?
the
She
planning
was
board
at the
meeting
planning board meeting too.
to listen to Ryan Pope present.
Yeah.
But we have not met, this one included.
Wonderful. Is your last name Cram?
Cray, C-R-A-Y.
C-R-A-Y.
Yes, sorry.
No, thank you.
Excuse me, Sally?
Yeah?
Mike Mulhern is here, his camera and mic are on.
Okay. All right. Mike, if you're out there, you can introduce yourself, say that you're here. Hi, Mike.
Hello, I'm Mike Mulhern and I'm here.
You're great. That's terrific. So you can hear everything going on. If you have anything you want to say, just pop your voice out and just yell.
Sounds great,
Hear sometimes what we don't see, so.
sounds great.
So how is the state doing?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. The first one I'll actually mention is the Workforce Housing Coalition is putting on tomorrow morning, which I know Sally
Yes.
and Michael, you both are attending and registered for, but we are putting on a coastal resilience and housing event in Hampton that is, within this committee, we've had some discussions around sort of the environmental impacts and how sort of smart land use planning plays into that. This is sort of tailored specifically around the increased flooding, especially in the coastal communities, and moving some of those conversations forward. So that's tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 10:30 in Hampton. There are still a few spots available that folks can RSVP on our website if they're interested. It's free for anyone who is on a municipal committee or board, so just to make sure we have as many folks as possible coming. So we're excited for that and continue sort of our efforts to do policy things that come out of the communities that we're serving on and serving with. So that's, but
We stood at hope.
stood at hope. Well, we're a little bit below that, I guess, at this point. So, you know, this committee has tracked and we've provided updates on a handful of different pieces of legislation. As a reminder, like a whole bunch of things were proposed at the beginning of the session. The legislation around accessory dwelling units did not pass. The legislation around duplexes did not pass. The one that is still left is this bill, House Bill 1400, which includes a few different policy provisions at this point. There's a parking provision on there that would limit what a municipality could require in terms of parking spaces for larger multifamily. So I believe at this point the compromise is 20 plus units. You can't require more than 1.5 spaces per unit. So it was, and this is something that's particularly, the developer could certainly build more, but you couldn't be in a situation significantly more. This is a big deal for workforce and affordable housing projects where oftentimes folks do not necessarily have access to 2 cars, and you may have a single parent, you may be sharing a car, you may be walking to work. Like, there are a lot of different reasons why some of the larger parking mandates are particularly expensive and burdensome for workforce housing. So there's that piece. It also includes some elements from the Omnibus bill, which we had talked about at one point here, that includes a potential expansion of 79E if communities were to adopt it, that is specifically designed for office to residential conversions. And then it allows communities that are not in a town council format but would like to have their select board vote to change zoning. You could put that as a warrant article on your town meeting for the town to allow the select board to do that. So sort of another way of trying to sort of make the process work a little bit better, especially for some of the non-town council towns. So that is in a...
So Nick, that would, excuse me, so that proposal would allow, you know, towns without council form of government, zoning change could be made by their Board of Selectmen or council, rather than having to wait till the annual town meeting?
If the voters of the town selected that option going forward. So they would...
A one-time vote.
A one-time vote would then empower the select board to, you know, make, you'd still have to go through the public hearing process. You would still need, I mean, just like you do in a town
Wow,
council
well, that
format.
is,
So
doesn't affect Durham, but I hope they do that. That would be great.
it does feel like it would streamline and allow for, you know, not just it to be at one
It
point
works.
each year.
And
and
the
it-
idea that, does that look favorable?
So where we're at in the process right now, we just finished the committee of conference process. So at this point, anything that got passed in one chamber, passed in the other chamber, but was different, went to a committee of conference to negotiate the differences between the House and the Senate. Every bill that is still alive had unanimous sign-off from the conferees in that committee, and now goes further. It could be rejected, and then obviously would have to go to the governor for his signature. But the fact that it came out of the committee with the unanimous signatures is a good sign, I think, for its prospects.
So once a bill goes to the conference committee between the House and the Senate, they do that once, they don't do that a second time?
Correct, yep.
Useful. But that's where we can maybe pick up that, so we're trying to carry it a little further. But at least, you know, the parking limits could, I mean, they do ask for way too much. Way too much. And the office to changing that could be significant in some places. Though it is very challenging changing office to home rental because of the light factor and where's the one window, and you just go out long, skinny, it's a hot, you have to really kind of completely rework it, but it's doable. You can do it.
Absolutely, and that's what we've heard from developers, and I know other towns have heard about that too, is it depends quite a bit for residential uses.
You know, but it's possible. Okay.
I did read an article this week about a ballpark that was converted into housing units, a baseball
Wow.
park. Yeah.
Where was
They-
this?
I can't remember exactly where it was, but yeah, they took a stadium that wasn't used and converted it to units all
It
fake.
was an interesting
Yeah.
It's
I
kind of
think
cool.
the other push is like some of the retail space or areas that are zoned industrial or the dead cinematic, I think that a cinema anyway, over in Portsmouth. And they tore it down because obviously there's only so many that are going to survive. And they're putting housing in there. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. Yeah, you got to, I assume, drive through the parking lot that has a lot of amenities, right? You got your restaurants, you got your grocery.
It's a good spot
And it's a
there.
great spot for
On
that,
one,
and
yeah.
it's, you know, it's really interesting that Portsmouth is definitely looking at some innovative places that would never have gone through before.
I wonder, could Nick and Mike talk about the charrette in Portsmouth? I don't know whether people here would be welcome to attend, but it's really an interesting thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I'll send you all our one pager, so you at least know when and where it is. Nick, do you want to start it off, or?
Sure, and Taylor, you can certainly jump in. She's put a ton of work in on this too.
Yeah.
So on June 20th and 21st, we are doing a charrette along with Mike and Service Credit Union in Portsmouth. For folks that aren't familiar with sort of the charrette process, it is a sort of an intensive 2-day visioning process around like what could this be. And for us, when we're doing it, it's in the housing context about really bringing in with a specific property, and it includes that public process where there's the listening and facilitated conversation. It also includes a whole host of sort of professional volunteers, so architects, engineers, landscape architects, traffic engineers, developers, lenders that are coming together and really trying to come up with a specific sort of plan based on the feedback that we get from the sort of what is part of either a master plan, if it's a municipal process, or sort of a vision that came from the property owner there. And so what happens is we'll do on Thursday night, there will be a public information listening and facilitated session where we'll have those conversations about what folks would want to see there. Friday during the day, we have a sort of an all-day work session where the teams of volunteers will work together to come up with specific sort of designs and schemes that could work on the project. And then in the evening on Friday, we will have a presentation, again, open to the public, that the volunteers, what they came up with and what this could look like. And so that is designed, ultimately, there will be a book that the charrette host, in this case, Service Credit Union, will have that with a potential project that, hopefully has some good community buy-in down the road.
Would people from the task force be welcome to attend?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'd love to have it. Yeah, we open it to the community. There's 242 abutters, and employees of Service Credit Union. We hope to get, 150 people there. So, I mean, it is a process that the credit union really embraces. We are community advocates, and to go about the process of developing 26 acres in back of our corporate building and not including the community in its design would be a mistake on our behalf. So we are taking some risk, and we all know the risk of butters in appeal, but we hope to be able. We've got 2 good facilitators along with wonderful, and so we really have our fingers crossed that it is a successful session, but it's something that we have to do. We're a credit union that is a community advocate, so we look forward to it.
And Mike, what we could do is we could send the RSVP link to this group of people
Oh,
so
that would
that
be
you
great.
all can RSVP, and then we
Yeah.
have sort of a running list of who is attending. A one-pager, indeed it is.
Do you have any idea, I know that you probably, it's premature, but do you have any idea how many units there might be and what might be affordable workforce?
Well, yeah, I've been challenged quite a bit by senior management because we had our preliminary conceptual plan. It's just something that I wanted to have at least, and we're not going to give it to the charrette group, but right now it looks like 182 units, 27 of which would be market townhouses, which senior management is saying, no, we're into this for affordable housing. So we are, kind of rethinking it, and that's part of the SHREP process. It being 100% affordable under a rental. Yeah, our mission is affordable housing, workforce housing. So to offset that with market, I've been challenged to try not to do that. The experts tell me you're crazy. Never to do it, and it's, right now they're saying, if you could do 50-50, that would be incredible. But senior management would let's say 100%. So that's where we're moving. 182 now, Michael. We hope 250 to 275 on the parking end of it all. We look to get some relief from busing. Could hopefully do a loop through. It gives us 20% relief. We also have a corporate building that overnight parking is not being used. So add in, it's another 20% relief. So that's 40% parking relief. That gets us up to the number of 250 or so. So we hope for that.
Has any credit union in the country ever done this before?
Yeah, there is one. I've connected with them down in South Carolina. Good question, Michael. It's unusual, and hopefully we can get some momentum with this. Frequently talk about getting a shovel in the ground right now, not 5.5 years from now. So, our CEO he's a wonderful man, and when I brought it to his attention a year ago, he said, I always thought that it would let that land affordable housing development. So
There are some other examples of businesses locally that are using excess land to turn it in for employees or for mission-aligned affordable. Kennebunk Savings Bank up in Kennebunk just did this with Avesta Housing with some excess land behind us. And there are other businesses that are having the same kind of conversation.
It's actually a pretty old concept. Go back to the mills.
Yeah.
They built all those, which are actually now high-end apartments. The old tenements that were built, and it makes sense because people have to live somewhere. You can't maintain a workforce.
I brought this up in one of our meetings with the folks. It was really, I thank the city of Portsmouth for rezoning. We rezoned mobile homes and apartments, about 82 units in total. They rezoned it to Gateway 1. 31 partials throughout the city were so. Without zoning, we wouldn't have any opportunity to do what we wanted to do. So that's why it's so significantly important that we really take a look at our zoning in Durham and really open it up. It is a form of discrimination, and the more I study on it, the more upset I get with it. So I thank the city of Portsmouth. They did a fantastic 31 partials, and it's now supported the movement that we can build a mixed-use residential.
That's great. That would be great to go and observe and to see how that worked. I don't know if the task force, certainly. I don't know if some members of the planning board. I think it could be educational.
Yeah.
I think education. I mean, I've been to a lot of Housing Academy workshops and a lot of these. I went to 2 last week. I'm going to the climate change one tomorrow. And the more you go to these events, which I would encourage members of our task force and certainly members of our planning board to go to more, and our planner to go to more of these things, because you really learn what you don't know. We don't know what we don't know. I mean, that's a reality. And the complexity in building workforce housing. And there's a lot of knowledge out there with people that are in the industry, in finance and in building and in there's a lot of number crunching that has to happen that I think that we are completely unaware of when we're making regulations for our zoning. We have to make sure that we're making rules that are obtainable financially. Because if they can't crunch the numbers, the buildings aren't going to be built. and it's useless legislation. So we need to, concentrate on that. So it would be really good it would be fun to see that. I could see us doing a charrette for a couple of properties
yeah.
in Durham that are town-owned, or we can say the word charrette in Durham, and it can be a scary word, it's like, oh no. But Mill Plaza, why not bring it? We don't own it, wish we did, but why not bring it?
Oh, and we
Well,
did
they've
do a
actually
charrette
done
for Mill Plaza
We're not going to do
years
another
ago.
charrette for Mill Plaza, let's back on that, but I noticed on the town goals, the looking at the government-owned, the federal government-owned properties, like the post office and the Fish and Game, as to,
Yeah,
Post
I
office would be
I
interesting.
asked about, didn't think that there was an awful lot of potential. For one thing, you would, there might not, there could be more use at the post office building. I noticed that, I think their elevator's been broken ever since the tenant went from upstairs, but what makes this town a town to me was the post office, I mean, you come into town
need
and
to
there's
keep
the
the
post
post
office and you can walk across and go to the grocery or whatever. And I don't think that property is that big, but it's on the goals, about why it was a priority on the goals, and they said, there should be a better use of the,
if you could
You
get
know, if you
some
could get-
small studios in there or
you
something.
might, oh yeah,
Whatever.
yeah, that would be,
But it could be
and
interesting.
of course, I don't know the other property well, so it's over at the West
Down
Edge,
on-
right?
Yeah, I think that might actually be swallowed up with
Oh, which one?
the West Edge, won't it?
It won't
Fish
just
and
get in-
Game? It's
won't
over
it?
Oh,
Isn't that's over?
That's, yeah, part of West Edge. part
Yeah,
of
that
the
would
Edge.
be swallowed up
But
in West
anyway,
Edge.
it's on there, it'd be interesting to know if it's anything in
Yeah.
that, but when you look at the amount of open land, this is the federal government, we're not sure
I mean, it's going to
how
get
that's
done.
managed, but you look at, I don't know, just easier things to hit than that, I would assume. And it's been
Probably.
inquired about, I think, right? Have you inquired with, was that something
I
you were
think Todd
tasked
has it in
with,
the past.
Michael?
Oh, sorry, about the Edge?
Post
Yeah,
office?
no, the post office.
Yeah, we looked into that some. They use a lot of the back of the lot for their trucks. The word I got from the post office is that as long as they have their trucks there, there's may not be space to do anything more. To move their trucks, they'd probably move the post office. So
Yeah, I think-
I'm not sure there's any
I
opportunity.
think the federal government does very well.
Yeah, this is the.
Trying to
post
get-
office. Anyway, that was interesting.
Eileen, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to ask a little bit ago what the address is for the property in Portsmouth.
Oh, yeah.
126 Lang Road and Long Meadow.
126 Lang Road? And
Yes.
Long Meadow? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we should expect, could we send that to the planning board too?
That'd be, you're not going to be overwhelmed by Durham people.
We're not going to, we're probably.
Can we invite the
No.
task force and
people.
planning board?
We'll probably end up with 3.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think Taylor's going to get pizza for everybody. too.
Well, then we're going to have a big
Pizza bites,
turnout.
everybody bring a box of pizza bites, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yep, everybody got pizza. Okay, cool. Any other than their kind of,
There is, the only other update is some of the American Rescue Plan funds were reappropriated back to the Invest New Hampshire program, so they are reopening the HOP grant applications, which obviously the town of Durham was awarded for our first part of that phase 1, the analysis piece.
and on that, could you fill us in
Yeah.
on the bit of
So-
information?
Yeah,
And the
so
assessment?
as you know, we got a grant from the state for $25,000. $20,000 for the housing needs assessment and $5,000 for a housing forum. We have spent the $20,000 with RKG. They, they did their first draft and they presented that to the task force and the council. My sense was the task force, seemed quite pleased with it, although there were a few comments and suggested changes or corrections. At the council level, there were some real concerns. So RKG, they are going to come back. We've asked them to come back and present to the council about this final draft, and we're paying them extra because their work, they did the $20,000. So the town's going to pay them a little bit extra for this presentation. Todd had suggested that they come to the council and the task force. And I asked Todd if they could just come to the council because we would have to pay for both meetings. This way, I think they're going to come just to the council. The task force will be welcome to attend. You'll be invited by the council. Any members can participate in the discussion and ask questions, and we'll certainly have the DCAT. But I didn't think we needed to have them come to a separate task force meeting. Sally was okay with doing it that way.
I don't think we need a separate one, but I do think it would be nice to actually get a nice invitation, says please join us, rather than just say if you want to come, because I think it's important that the task force hear the presentation from the professionals. So I just think I don't mean to split hairs on this and be picky, but I think to get a formal invitation from the council to emphasize the importance that we're there that evening would be nice.
Yeah.
When's it? I may have had brain fade, but I don't remember it actually being scheduled. Is it scheduled for?
Not yet.
Well, we asked them hopefully for the June 24th council meeting, but RKG doesn't know yet.
Okay.
So tentatively the 24th. If not that, it'll be council in July. And I lost track of we've sort of put it off because that's a big deal. And I just checked and realized that the $5,000 for the forum expires the end of July. So we won't be able to use that $5,000. I'm sorry for missing that, but I don't think that we would have been on target anyway. And so hopefully, if we want to do a forum, we can certainly do that. We can still plan on that.
Yeah, I have some ideas on that, so we can, our next steps. Yeah. Okay, is there any more?
Was the 5,000 for just community engagement at large, or was it specifically?
It was for a forum, but I think it's probably somewhat flexible, but we would have to, I believe, encumber that by the end of July.
Can we use it for printing and?
I mean, if there's some kind of outreach that we could spend part or all of that within the next, that gives us 6 weeks. I'll check, but I think if we encumber that, we might be able to use it.
So I know we had some talk, and this might transition to that next step piece, but around something at Tideline or just sort of a community discussion or a walking tour. I know Al had sent that around.
Yeah, there might be some, I think it would be really good if we could use it for some visuals that we could start to place around town. And I think because like the energy committee and the sustainability, there's, why can't we have some of these nice things that they have? And then we could set them up. But I do have some ideas on how we can do some community outreach, even if it's not a big outreach situation. And that walking tour that I'll explain that in a minute. But do we have anything more? Or can we move on to a discussion about housing, a bit of a walking tour and a discussion in Exeter for the Housing Academy. And I have a picture. They have a large property on Epping Road that they're redeveloping, and to make out what they could fit there. And they've created a mixed use where the retail will be up front and toward the back. I have a picture of it. I don't know if anybody can see what it kind of looks like. You can look at it later. But the developer of that was there, and it was interesting to hear his story as to how they got through it. Exeter is very proactive and very open to working with developers and making it work, much like Dover has. And I think that is key. Is the community do it they need, they can make changes. So it will be an interesting number. How many units is it? It's
A little bit as the
144.
As the math has changed, but
Yeah,
it was about, I think, 25% or 20% affordable to, or workforce.
Yeah, it's, and they had to add more 80, 60, because it does come down to the money. We can have visions of 100% workforce housing, but if you can't build it, nobody can build it to lose money. It doesn't happen. Even if you could build it for your own, I'm going to build this out of my own, altruistic needs, you still got to maintain, so it's not, and that doesn't happen, nobody does it. So that was interesting, and then the multifamily housing event on, was it Friday? Some great statistics and some great facts and some great financing, property management, and how to go about all this. And it was just a lot of really good information. And they usually do share some really interesting facts. Affordable apartment is that one building that is, and your apartment is inside. It's not an external entry, it's an internal entry, because people don't understand what garden styles are. People really don't. We need to maybe explain the difference between a townhouse and a garden style. But it's that big box building where you have lots of apartments. It's quick to build and it's cheaper to build. And the cottages actually were more high-end to build. And so we need, I think, having this information and being realistic about that mix of housing that everybody seems to be great. We need to make sure that we're looking at a realistic number. And the other thing was the rent to own information in New Hampshire in particular, to rent than it is to own. And so I know one of the counts to purchase property, we need to make available houses so people can buy houses because that's how they create wealth. Well, unfortunately, right now, you're not creating wealth by buying a house. You're actually not able to. And so renting is actually more financially feasible than purchase. So we should be aware of making rental, we need more rental property nationwide. And so we shouldn't be afraid of that or consider ourselves being,
Yeah, the
irresponsible
first goal
in
is
that.
to provide housing. It's not to create wealth for a relatively small number of winners. It's to create housing, and through rental housing you can create far more. For purchase, it's very limited in wealth creation because any good project, in my view, is going to be permanently limited increases. So even if you buy relatively cheaply, any good program is going to be limited to the rate of inflation for resale. So it's not going to be creating a huge amount of wealth. But there's benefits to ownership, as we know.
And when we're looking at to purchase properties, we may not want to be pushing the only opportunity as single-family standalone units. We may look at condominiums, townhouse, garden-style condominiums are also a good option. They're easier to build, and they are for purchase. Exeter has some, Dover has some. They're excellent options for purchase at that AMI, at that price range that is affordable. When you're building a standalone house, the cheapest I've seen for new build standalone house, a duplex is at $699. All right, and
Wait,